Being the spotlight is the place to network and chat with me. Being the spotlight is the place to chat with me. I'm Sue of ID.
Hello and welcome to Be in the Spotlight, and today my guest is Olga Zilberberg from The Missing Link. Olga, if you'd like to just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll have a little chat if that's okay.
Oh, hello. Thank you, Sue. Olga Zilberberg. I set up the Missing Link a few years back as a result of me working with different recovery colleges and working on mental health recovery education. And I noticed there was a missing link between the way we work with individuals and how we see them. So I started noticing that certain individuals would need different approaches and accommodations so they could thrive in a recovery college setting. And I noticed that some of those individuals were neurodivergent. So the missing link was if we wanted to help those individuals, we needed to actually work with them at the basic level of meeting their needs. And their needs, which is different needs to other students that were walking through the door. That's the type of work I do. I now train and educate and bring awareness to organizations on mental health and neurodivergence and neurodivergent conditions.
Oh, wow, really interesting work. Can you share a specific challenge that you've faced in promoting neurodiversity and inclusion and how you've overcome it?
Yeah, sure. So the neurodiversity movement has been going on for not that long now. And whenever I talk to individuals about neurodiversity awareness, neurodivergent conditions, the first thing I see is people go, so kind of like the hands to the head, and what they tell me that cross their minds is, first of all, is fear. So that's one of those barriers and challenges. The people are worried and they're scared to get it wrong, to say the wrong words, to use the wrong language and terminology. Then another challenge that I come across is we're feeling very overwhelmed. There is no guidelines, really. Yes, there is the Equality Act. Yes, neurodiversity is covered under the Equality Act, but we haven't got the infrastructure to support. We haven't got policies. So if I ask them, you have any neurodiversity policies in place? Or no, we haven't got any policies. We don't have any forums set up. We don't have any focus groups set up in the organization, and we just feel very overwhelmed by the whole idea of having to support neurodivergent individuals. And then finally is that question that eventually hits them of, how much is this going to cost me? Is this going to be really expensive? And I always say to individuals, having a conversation with a neurodivergent individual is not expensive.
No.
So you can start off, your accommodations and your way of being more inclusive starts off with a conversation. And even that conversation, people struggle with it. They just find it that it's a very difficult conversation. And when I ask them why or what stops them, it all comes back to the language. And it all comes back to them saying, I don't want to offend anyone. I don't know whether I get the terminology right. This is new for me. So some of the challenges and the way that people can overcome those challenges is really reading about neurodiversity, and there are loads of guidelines or guides or packages out there that you can actually have access to for free. The big organizations have everything online and you can access it. Deloitte has a really good package on neurodiversity in the workplace. JP Morgan as well. Siemens have done really good work. So there are loads of bits and bobs that you can access, and lots of organizations that have put things in place that can give you an idea, and you can start talking to individuals about, we really want to support you. And another thing that I say to people is having the willingness to help, and being humble enough to say, I really, really want to get it right for you, but I know that most likely I won't get it 100% right for you, and I'm really sorry, but I really want to work with you on it. That speaks so loudly. Even, I mean, for me, going into a meeting a month ago or so, and it was a meeting supporting a local council to get their neurodiversity, their neurodiversity planning and strategy in place. I'm walking in, and the person I was meeting was a head of department. And the first thing she said to me, she asked me, she said, can I just ask you what your pronouns are and how you identified?
Okay.
And that was amazing, because then that was, my pronouns are, she and her, and I identify as autistic ADHD. And that was so nice to be asked. And that's all it,
No, you don't.
that was all it took.
Yeah,
you know?
that is rare, isn't it?
Yeah.
I must admit, where I pick up, I don't get asked, but if I don't hide behind. I think the biggest thing for me was when I found out that about myself. It's sort of learning about myself, and it's all been part of my journey. And the more I've discovered, and the more I sort of learn. But even in the classroom, I think, I say I am more or less straight away now, because I think it just covers me for being myself, and the ideas can go all over the place and everything else. But also, I think because I said it out loud, it also makes it easier for the other people who may be neurodiverse in the classroom to speak up. And then I think then those that are neurotypical will, okay, we've got a diverse group here. And it's all about embracing, everybody, treating everybody equally, but being diverse to their needs and stuff. So that brings me on to the next question, which is like, what common barriers do organisations tend to face when they're implementing inclusive practices, and what strategies can help address these barriers? I think we've talked a little bit about it, but I just sort of,
yeah, that's a really good question, and it really ties in very nicely with the previous one. Barriers oftentimes is neurodiversity and accommodations and adjustments and neuro inclusion tends to sit in the too hard to deal with bucket. And there are so then I start hearing things like, well, we can't accommodate for everyone. And that's that. And I can see when I'm talking to the individuals. A couple of days ago, actually, I had a meeting with an organization that we're trying to be more neuro-inclusive. And I could see how the person leading the group was becoming very, very overwhelmed. And the comment was exactly that: we can't possibly accommodate for everyone. So I think it's taking a step back and rethinking that, and changing the lens a little bit. So we're not trying to accommodate for everyone. I mean, we are, but we are not trying to go on to very, very detailed. So and what I mean is, because this is going to come across wrong and say, well, you're just you're just taking your words back, what you said earlier. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to create that low curve effect. So as it happened in the 40s, when we started lowering the curves, right, and that's where the term comes from, for wheelchair users. And all of a sudden we started noticing that moms with proms could get up the pavement in a much easier way. And then we started noticing that people loading and offloading,
Mm.
heavy stuff with the little trolleys, could
Mm.
get up and down in an easier
Mm.
way.
Mm.
And then you start noticing, nowadays little kiddies that come with a little scooter next
Mm.
to mommy on the pavement, they
Mm.
can go down
Mm.
easier.
Mm.
They
Mm.
don't trip over, they don't have to
Mm.
get off the scooter,
Mm.
it's
Mm.
easier.
Mm.
So what we're trying to do is take a step back and support the individual and see if we can just create a way in which everyone benefits.
Mm.
So one very clear example, I guess, from my work, I have tin boxes of fidget toys when I
Mm.
go onto delivering training.
Mhm.
And I take my boxes with fidget toys and I put one on each side. Usually the room is set up on U shape or semicircle or something along those lines. And I put one on each side or put one in the front. So that anyone needs anything in their hands to fidget with,
Mm.
please come and grab something. There is plenty to choose
Mm.
from.
Mm.
And I would know from the register there will be some individuals that are neurodivergent because they will have
Mm.
said. So I get to see that, and I see that they will come forward,
Mm.
pick something. But then I
Mm.
see that neurotypical individuals also come forward
Mm.
and pick something.
Mm. Mm.
So that's an easy way of pens and papers if we go into meeting rooms.
Yeah.
So talking to an ADHD that I was supporting a few months back, she said, my anxiety comes up when I'm having to go to meetings all day long. I'm going from one meeting to
Yeah.
another,
Yeah.
and I tend to forget my pen and paper. And
Yeah.
then I'm sitting in the meeting, I'm going like, oh, I forgot the pen and paper. And I don't want to stand up because then I don't want people to say, oh gosh, she's forgetting again her pen and paper. This is so annoying. So an easy solution was, can you ask for pen and paper to be put in
Mm.
every meeting room?
Mm.
So everyone in the organization would benefit
Mm.
from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's an easy thing to do. So it doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg.
No. No.
And then again, if you were to have to be more detailed in terms of someone needing a particular type of software
Yeah.
to help and support, or someone needing coaching,
Yeah.
you can access that. It is paperwork that you've got to do, but there is access to work,
Yeah.
and they will help with certain, there is a pool of money that
Yeah.
organizations can access
Yeah.
that can support those individuals.
Yeah.
And yes, it does take time, and yes,
Mm.
you have to do paperwork.
Mm.
But from the individuals I've worked with and what I hear, they have used it, and it's been very useful to have 6 sessions of an individual coaching them
Mm.
to support them with their ADHD,
Yeah.
support them with their dyslexia, or
Yeah.
support them with their autism and how to manage, workload, how to manage
Mm.
anxiety, or how to manage
Mm.
eating. So that it is quite useful.
Yeah.
So I think what I would say is that willingness, is having an open
Yeah.
conversation,
Yeah.
and then brainstorming what you can do. And sometimes, honestly, it doesn't have to cost
No.
that
No.
much. It
No.
might be more breaks, it might be a quieter space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it might be, having something in the background. It might be working from home, really,
Yeah. Yeah.
as well sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Those are all really good things. I mean, my experience has been in the classroom more recently with regards to taking the exams, and I had a learner who hadn't disclosed anything, so I don't think that they knew they had got any neurodiverse. They disclosed something, but it wasn't a neurodiverse. Neurodivergent. They didn't
Yeah.
disclose anything that was neurodiverse at all. But working with them, I started to spot some signs and things like that. And
Yeah.
when it came to actually doing the exam, getting the exam preparation ready, I realised that they had problems with reading, the comprehension of what they were reading. They were slower, and there were a lot of characteristics that just showed me that they were going to need some more support. So I flagged it up and said, I think we're going to need to put in extra time. I think we're going to need a reader. And I think we also need a prompt, because they were also spending too long on things like that. So it was things that I felt that person would need in place, even though they hadn't asked for it or whatever. Because I from my own experiences and what I've been through and gone through, I didn't want that person to not pass because they they weren't given the support, and they benefited. They didn't pass all of it the first time, but the second time. And then what I did is, like, I had, because I knew what their where they were struggling, I was then able to tailor some sort of one-to-one strategy with them, what to focus on. Don't look for that. And you've got a person that's going to be helping you to read it. Make sure that you use them to get it through. But going through the question, not going through the questions, obviously I don't know what the questions are going to be on, but how to answer it, how to tackle the paper, or how to tackle it. They resat it and they passed it the next time. So it is, sometimes it's just little things like that make the difference between whether a person passes or fails, or that extra support. And yes, okay, it costs the payment of another person to help in the exam, but then that is what making those changes to help the barriers to somebody that is learning. I don't think it's something, unless you've had experience of working with people that are neurodiverse, or you're neurodiverse yourself, you don't always see those and make allowances for it.
No, you're right. One of the things that I noticed, just what you said, with regards to that student, is that some individuals don't know that they have they have those different needs, and they don't know how to ask for, because they've always been a square peg in a round hole, and they've always found the way around. And even if they were not to find the way, what I found was that they tend to take it upon themselves of they sit in shame. I always say is that, oh well, here we are again. I'm just so useless anyhow. I knew I wasn't going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, because they've had that life experience of not being able to reach that goal, or not being able to do, because no one paid attention maybe to their needs. And we're talking about, sometimes, we're talking about adults or young adults that don't have the awareness, or have not had the opportunity to learn and talk about it. It's always been, you're so slow, you're so, why does it take you so long? So you kind of internalize, you internalize that I'm not good enough. And for me, I mean, being diagnosed late in life, for me it was that I opening moment, or penny drop moment, when suddenly I kind of thought, actually everything makes sense now.
Totally.
But it was really hard to start the journey of rediscovering myself, to be able to advocate for myself and say, actually, last minute changes are really hard for me, or actually I really need to plan. So if I'm gonna go, if you're asking me to come to a meeting, and we were having a meeting online, and you decide last minute that if you have the time, come over, you can meet the team, which is lovely, and I would do. But I need to have more time, because I need to plan my route, and I need to check out how the building looks like, because otherwise anxiety sits in, and I need to check on the sat nav, so I don't take the wrong turning at the roundabout, and then I'm going round and round and round, because I've blocked up, and I'm just thinking, oh, because if I take the wrong turning and I end up going, you know, I can go either to Swindon, I can go either to London, and like, oh, why am I going to London? I'm not going to London. I'm going over to Swindon. Why? So, and these little things, but still sometimes nowadays I kind of beat myself up thinking, oh, why can I not just jump in the car and happily go? Why do I have to? Because because we've been drilled into our minds that we should be able to, and we have internalized that ableism, that, you know, we should be able to do all these things. And no, my brain is different. So
yeah, exactly. And it took me a very, very long time. And like you, I attended a course with somebody that we actually know, and I went to find out about it. And it was going through attending that course to find out about it that it was like looking in the mirror. And, you know, by the end of that 4 weeks, I'm thinking, oh my God, you know, I've been trying to find these answers for so long. And finally, oh my gosh, you know, it's opened up this whole new explanation of why and our understanding. And then the more you sort of look into it, you find out more and stuff like that. And I mean, I overlap with two, because ADHD and ASD, and ASD was more common in my family, but the ADHD part was, it for me was actually stronger, and more of the where I found that more of my issues were lying to. But you're saying, you know, that the two sides of the brain are constant conflict with each other. So, you know, I give it sorting out myself on one side, and you got the other side challenges. But yeah, it is. But like you said about preparing and things like that, and I will find that if I've gone prepared for a meeting, I know it's about, I can talk literally about it in minute detail about it. But if I'm called into a meeting that I've not been prepared for, or I'm throwing questions that I've not had a chance to think about, I really struggle with that. And it's, to me, I put it like the exam feelings. Because I'm dreadful with exams. I'm great at running and delivering, but if you say to me exams, my brain just goes blank, and I just can't think of anything. I totally and I struggle with what I'm saying, or I babble. So I like to be sort of prepared, or at least give my brain something to focus on and stuff like that. So
that's so very true. On that note, some of the things that some organizations put in place, now that you mentioned the exams and questions and things like that, is and what really should be like is to have an agenda when people go into meetings, to the point of, and I have had these, if you're having a break or you're starting at whatever time it is, to stick to your timings, and to have that clear, concise language. And you've reminded me now, when we were talking about ASD and you know, having to know, I have had situations in which I've been in meetings and I've had individuals saying, and there's been other autistic individuals in the meeting, and I've had individuals saying, right, we're going to have a break in a minute. And it's a figure of speech that you say we're going to have a break in a minute. But it was interesting that the person that was with me was an autistic individual that has done some of my autism courses with me. He kind of looked, and then the minute went past, and the person was still talking, and he looked at me, and I said, yeah, the minute has gone past. So to sticking to those timings, if you say I'm going on, we're going to have a break, I always would say we're having a break at, I don't know, 10:55, and then sticking to that, and the break is going to be 10 minutes. And I always say we are coming back at 11:05, because 10 minutes for someone with ADHD, you know, it's time blindness. 10 minutes is what? What's 10 minutes? I've gone off already looking at something else. 20 minutes later, it's like, oh, well, what is Olga? What is Olga? Oh yeah, what's she doing over there? You've lost me. But if you say, then I'm able to set an alarm on my watch, on my phone. And that helps me, you know, when I say, I'm not going to say the name now. Hey, give me an alarm for, and then the
Mm.
alarm rings, I know I've got to get back, or I know that's the end of the
Yeah,
break.
yeah,
And likewise, when going through the interview process for organizations, providing those questions for the person walking through the door. You know, no one is going to go on 3 days. If you get an interview, let's say today, in 2 weeks' time, they already have your CV in place. They already know what you've done. You're not going to go and make up whatever else. Why not providing those interview questions so the person can prepare them, and you don't suddenly sit in there with a panel and they get, you know, you get asked a question and you start, you take longer to process. And that was one of my biggest challenges in corporate world. It was going in and being asked a question and having to answer that question. So you're trying to fit in that neurotypical world in which, you know, so there is
yeah,
that loss of
yeah,
masking, and
yeah,
you start mumbling
yeah,
words out. So you
yeah,
don't really come across
yeah,
as with the full potential that you could actually
yeah,
bring to that organization,
yeah,
because you're mumbling, because you're
yeah,
super stressed and super anxious, because the job really means something, or getting the job means
yeah,
something to you.
yeah,
So
yeah,
on top of the normal anxiety and stress that anyone would have,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
If you're giving a question, and like me, you know, I take a bit longer to process the information.
yeah,
So thank you so much
yeah,
for sending the questions across,
yeah.
because that allowed me to actually talk to you now and not go and just
Yeah,
smile like,
yeah, yeah,
oh,
yeah,
yes,
exactly.
so that's a really good question.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
it
yeah.
helps the individual with the flow and
Mm.
explaining what they can do for
Mm,
you,
mm.
and what, you know.
That is such a good thing, and I think you hit that. And one of the biggest courses I'm teaching on a regular basis is building your confidence to get back to work or volunteering. And you know, it's all of those issues that we go through, and trying to help people do that. And I always say, prepare for an interview. You can prepare for the interview, but the trouble is, every interview that I went to in the recent years was, they didn't ask you the questions that you prepared for. They'd ask you ones you hadn't thought of, and you had to just sit there and think about how you'd answer. So
Yeah,
strategies for answering those questions, those
yeah,
tricky questions. But I one of them I had online because it was during the pandemic. Well, actually, I did 2 or 3 through the pandemic. But one of them, I had there were two or more people interviewing me, which is typical. But one of them was typing the questions, the interview questions, in the chat. And I felt that was really, really good, because it gave me a chance to focus on what the question was and think about how I would answer it, and then give me my answer. And it's the only interview I've ever been that's had that
that is a
that
good, yeah, that's
yeah,
such a good idea,
yeah,
actually,
yeah,
because for me, I've been I've been going to GP for I don't know how many years, Sue, but about 15 years, saying I can't hear properly. I can't hear properly, and I get all the tests done and everything, and then I go back and they say, no, everything is okay. So what it turned out to be last year, actually, as a result of being assessed and looked into and all the rest of it, there was suddenly all this, what you have is not a problem of not hearing, is auditory processing disorder. That's your problem. Oh my gosh. Now suddenly I understand. Wow. And being online, oftentimes I say to, when I do my courses online, I sometimes say on my deliveries, would you put your question in the chat as well? Because if someone is unmuting themselves to talk or ask a question, and there is tons of background noise, where you've got traffic going through, like last week, I think it was, there was someone trying to ask a question. We had a dog barking in the background, and at the same time there was a emergency services, whatever it was, going past. And she did say, oh, I'm so sorry, where I'm sitting is a very busy road, and it's and the dog is barking because of the emergency services. I couldn't hear. It was
no,
so, if there is background noise, I can't hear.
no,
So having those questions typed into
yeah,
the chat,
Yeah.
would have been, and I had to say to her, can you put it in the chat actually?
Yeah.
So because I'm more visual.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm
Same
more
here.
visual than I'm
Yeah.
auditory, because I struggle always with auditory. So that's
Yeah.
a really good point,
Yeah,
actually.
that's a really good tip as well about
Mm.
how you do the online. You know, if you've got a question,
Yeah.
to put it in the chat. I mean, trouble is a lot of the people I work with is English as a second language, so they write it in
Yeah.
sentence good. But yeah, that's a really good tip as well to how you can use the chat to make it. I mean, the thing is, and I think this is going back to the strategies we were talking about earlier on and the challenges. They don't have to be expensive things. It's just
No.
alternative ideas of ways
Yeah.
of working to help people. And
Yeah.
you know, and even people who are unknown about their neurodiversity, they
Yeah.
are often aware where they struggle, like you and me, you know, growing up thinking you're thick or stupid or made to feel that way.
Yeah.
But like my son is amazing in I mean, he was 15 before he got his diagnosis, but he'd started using technology and how it to help him to do so many things in ways I hadn't even thought about. So I've learned an awful lot just from him, with, you know, using the virtual, you know, a personal assistants like on the phone, you know, Siri, and
Yeah.
talking out loud and asking Google for things and Alexa and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Uses an awful lot of stuff to
Yeah.
do things. So
Yeah.
yeah, so when when he was, you know, struggling with the reading and stuff like that, using those tools to read out and process or speak aloud or stuff like that. And I think this is, we're going off piece a little bit here. It was surprising, but it is actually moving into the use of technology. So it is in the right area we're going. But one of the big debates that you'll see about schools is, should kids have a mobile phone or a smartphone when they're in primary school?
Yeah.
And why I don't think it's appropriate for them to have one in primary school, I do think they need one in secondary school. But I think it's being made to use it in a way that is for educational purposes and stuff like that. The primary school is a different matter, but it's they don't need a phone, but they need to be aware of the technology. But I think also in primary schools is the lack of using a mouse has become the real issue. With even when I was teaching in primary schools years ago, the kids were coming in and they didn't know how to hold the mouse because everybody was using a phone or a tablet, so it was using the swipe or the thumbs and from gaming. And they were actually holding the mouse and clicking the mouse with their thumb and not their fingers. So it's quite interesting. So anyway, talking of which, technology, which is now what we're going into, how do you see technology playing a role in advancing neurodiversity and inclusion?
Yeah, that's and that ties in with what you were saying, you know, using all these tools to support with asking questions, with reading. So I tell you what some individuals do. So I work with an individual that is dyslexic, and when we have meetings and he attends the meetings, he records the meeting, really. And what he does is then he gets the meeting notes and he puts them in ChatGPT, and he instructs ChatGPT, can you put this in a way that summarizes the meeting and get me my next steps? And then ChatGPT just produces that document, which he extracts and he looks. So he doesn't have to take notes during the meeting, because if he were, like he said, if I have to sit down and take notes, it takes me so long to write. It takes me so long to put into paper what I'm hearing, that by the time I'm putting the first sentence, you've already completed that sentence, and I'm not in the meeting. I'm not here with you.
No.
So I'm struggling. So that's one of the things that how people use technology in a way. And then you've got, of course, all these text to speech and speech to text type of readers that people use as well. But going beyond that, something as simple as talking to Siri, which you know, I always say that it's 4 people in our household and Siri, because everyone has a Siri doing things. But my youngest, who's got severe ADHD, she would put all her reminders Or she would say to Siri, Siri, set a reminder for so and so. Siri, remind me to do whatever it is. Siri, what's the weather gonna be like? You know, if she's going to school, what's the weather gonna be like? And she would also use Audible. So when you were talking about your son and the difficulties for reading, she always struggled with reading. So she's got ADHD with autistic traits. And as some people might know, and you well know, autistic individuals are pattern seekers. We do like having a pattern. So routine is a pattern, right? That pattern seeking for her showed up in the form of Dr. Seuss and the way he would write the books. Because the books, it was always a rhyme. So here I am, Sam I am, or something like that. It was all rhymes. So she started reading by reading all of Dr. Seuss books. And that led her on to comics. So it was a little bit, it wasn't rhymes anymore, but it wasn't a full text that school wanted her to do. And nowadays she's reading big chunky books, but the way she's doing it is she's buying the actual book and she's getting the book on Audible as well. So she plays the Audible as well as she's reading
it. That's a really good idea.
And that actually gets us through chapters. And I think it was yesterday, the day before yesterday, she came down and she went, oh my goodness, I'm nearly done. I've done 10 chapters. When in the past, that would have been a great difficulty. It wouldn't have happened. So some, you know, ways of using technology to help. And reading for my husband is dyslexic and he's got to read lots of policies. So he uses the reader because it's easier for him to actually being read the document. So him, and that's easier. And another way that people use ChatGPT, they use technology is using ChatGPT to help with the getting your thoughts organized in a way. So you know, I sometimes would use it and say, give me a structure for. So I'm writing a paper at the moment on peer support in recovery education, and I need to produce 5,000 words. So I've never done this before. I'm not an academic as such. So I kind of asked ChatGPT, would you give me a structure as to how I can do this? And actually it did, and it was a very simple structure of, you know, introduction should be 1,000 words or 500 words, main body, you want to put this, and that should be X number of words. So actually, it's not writing it up for me. All it's provided me is a structure so that I can then start, you know, I don't get caught up in the beginning and I do 3,000 words and I've got nothing to say at the end of. So that would be another way that people can use technology, really. Other than also calendars and calendar reminders and things like that, right?
There's so many, we're packed with information there.
I
was gonna say there's loads. I mean, I like, for me, for example, I don't do podcasts because I can't listen to them. I find it very difficult to focus on listening to. So, which is why I haven't done. But then I know that a lot of people can't sit down and watch an interview for an hour, but they can listen to it in the background. So, but I do like what you were saying about the reading and the processing of it, conversations like your daughter with reading the book and hearing the audio, especially if it's a heavy going book. I think that would be a real good tip there. But even for like me, if I'm in a meeting or training or something like that as the learner, I have to sit there and write notes. I would have to sit there and write, so I'm concentrating on what I'm hearing and making it done. Whether I can make sense of it at the end of it is another matter, but that's how I focus on listening and my concentration. It's sort of like the writing is keeping the brain active to the listening, and I'm seeing and I do think that there is a lot to be said about, you know, all of the senses. You use all of your senses for the learning process. Going back to the one that you said about the guy with the recording the meetings, that is something that I have started doing actually. recently, and I attended a coffee chat session with somebody back. It was around about Christmas time, I think it was, and they were a branding specialist, and they had an AI assistant come on. It's called Fathom, and it recorded the interview. So like it would be recording our session, and then at the end of it, I got a little email sent to me with a summary of the conversation and action points to take away with, which was
nice.
really, really good. So I, in my embracing technology and trying to do myself, I thought I would try using it. So I haven't done it for all of them, but I have done some meetings now where I've had conversations. And it's
Yeah,
recorded, and it records it, and it will come up with a summary at the end of what you've done and what you've covered, so you can then go
that's
back to it.
amazing.
So although I've
Yeah.
made notes, the AI assistant has been making them
Mm,
for me, so it's really
yeah.
good. So so that's again
That's
some more.
interesting, isn't it?
Yes, so that's definitely some examples of how technology
Yeah.
can help with training.
I'll tell you another one. If I'll just jump in, I'll tell you
No,
another
sorry,
one
yeah.
that came up this week on Tuesday that I hadn't seen. So I was delivering a training for a recovery college, and all of a sudden, I had what was it called? Read.ai.message notes
Oh,
being
okay.
added to
Oh,
the group. So it was 16 of us, and then suddenly that pops up. It pops up like a screen with no image and
yeah,
no
yeah,
person. There isn't a
yeah,
person. So I asked and I said, "Oh, that has popped up in there. I'm not quite sure."
yeah,
So the lady that added, she said, "Oh, I've added it because it's an AI generated meeting summary, and what
yeah,
it does is that it takes the summary of these 2 hours, so I don't have to take notes."
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
so for online, if you're on a Zoom platform, that would be on a Zoom platform that he did it.
yeah,
And then she put the link in there, and it was read.ai/pp,
yeah,
which was the app that she added,
yeah,
um, and that allowed her um to be present in the meeting and
yeah,
listen and
yeah,
participate
yeah, yeah,
without having to worry about taking notes.
yeah,
And then she said, and at the end of when we all say goodbye, then I get a message, an email with
yeah,
the notes
yeah,
for the
yeah,
meeting. One of the things that I would say is that she needed to ask permission for everyone
mm,
in the meeting, because
mm,
if it's just you talking at a group of people and no one participates and shares their lived experiences, then that's okay.
mm,
But in this instance, it was, share lived experiences.
yeah, yeah,
And we wanted to make sure that everyone was okay
yeah,
with their
yeah,
confidential information being
yeah,
captured in this
yeah,
way, and
yeah,
everyone was happy with it. Everyone was all
yeah,
right. But I thought that was another clever way of using
yeah,
technology,
yeah,
if
yeah,
everyone is happy,
yeah, yeah,
in which you're able to participate
yeah,
and attend the meeting
mm,
without the stress of, oh, I'm gonna miss something. I'm not taking notes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I thought I'd share that one with you
Yeah,
because I
no,
thought it was
that is a good
interesting.
one. That's a good one. I think the only thing I would say on there is when it's recording, does it email everybody, or do you have control over who it's being sent to? That's my only concern on that
Yeah,
one.
and I think she said it was sent to her. It was
But
sent to her.
yeah, yeah.
So, but
So
I've not explored it. I
no,
made a
no,
note. Um,
it's sort of the new area that I'm sort of dabbling with, but I
yeah,
thought it came to me and then I sent it on if I wanted to. But then I did have an
yeah.
email from somebody I was in a meeting with the other day, and they said, "Oh, that AI assistant was really good. It was really helpful." And I thought I hadn't known it was sending it to you, and oh dear, oh dear. If I'd realised that, I would have turned it off for part of the conversation. But anyway, lesson learned.
It's a learning curve, isn't it?
Exactly, exactly. So because I wasn't sure if it was sending the video of the conversation, and I think it sent a video, and I'm, oh dear, so I have to go in and check on that. But yeah, it's taking you out of these comfort zones and doing
Yeah,
using
definitely.
technology. So, but yeah, as I say, thinking what I do now, compared to what I would have done a couple of years ago, I can't. But I'm a completely different person. Completely different person. That's it. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a drink and start coughing.
Embracing technology, isn't it? That's what it is.
It
Yeah.
is embracing the
Yeah.
technology, and it's taken out of your comfort zone. And
Mm.
it's actually something with this type of technology as well, going back to what we were saying earlier. One of the big groups that I work with is, as I said, is building confidence and it's return to work. So whether it's the 50 plus through through employment or whatever that I'm doing workshop wise, and a lot of them are, they're embarrassed because you haven't grown up with the technology, they don't know how to do it, and they feel, they feel threatened by it. So the first thing you've got to do is to show that it's not something to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And like the interview sort of process, a lot of interviews are done online now, even now for the first interview, and they haven't used Zoom, or they haven't done FaceTime or anything. So part of that is getting them to take it, get online. So what we'll do is that in one of the sessions is that get them downloading the Zoom app, so they've got it on there. And then we'll do a video interview, and what I'll do is I'll set it up in the classroom, and then it's the only time I throw people out of the classroom, but to go off with their phones so they aren't in the room, to different part of the site, and join us on the video call, and we're having this video call, and then we get the old selfie take photos, so that, so they're engaging and having fun and stuff like that, and it's getting them to be more at ease, because that's the other thing, is they aren't able to necessarily even get on it, and that's the thing with what I'm finding is there's a lot of push for everybody to be digital, to get on the digital world, but there's still a huge amount of the population that aren't going to be able to access it for various reasons, and it's how we can find ways to help them and make it adaptable or accessible to them. And again, like I've got somebody I know that, again, with literacy problems, they can't read or write, but showing them, and so they can't read their letters, so being able to take a photo of the letter and see if it's urgent, can you tell me what this letter is, or get it so that you can scan it and get it read and read aloud, and skills like that are things you can do that will help make the technology accessible. And going back to ChatGPT, if you ask ChatGPT about translating things, it will always say to you about translating using a translating service and stuff like that. And these are all things that cost money, but you say to it, can you actually translate it yourself? Yes, of course it can. So it will translate it for you. And if you are worried about the accuracy of it, you put it through a translation thing from the foreign language into the English, and it does it perfectly. So we're working with a client which English isn't the first language, and sometimes they've got very good English now, but it's still not great. So trying to explain it to dual language resources has been quite beneficial. So I'm conscious of our time, and there's still a few questions that I wanted to go through. So we've talked a little bit about goals here and previously, and some tips that you've got, but what strategies do you recommend for setting and achieving goals in the field of inclusion and neurodiversity?
That is a good question. Is that it's for the individual to set and achieve the goals, right? As opposed to the organization wanting to be more inclusive.
I mean, you can interpret it both ways, but I think the second question would be with regards to organisations. So let's just say
let's merge them together.
Let's put them together.
Let's merge them together. In terms of goals and achievement, I think at an individual level, I think setting up a goal that is reasonable for you is the starting point. If you're going to set a goal because it's the way it's supposed to be and is how it has to be, you might set yourself up for failure, right? So, you know, if you are neurodivergent and you know your special interest and you know your ability to focus on those special interests for a long period of time, what's going to happen is, what we get to see is that individuals will engage in wanting to achieve that goal, and they will go in a manner that everything else will be dropped, because there are smaller goals, let's say, and everything else will be dropped, but you get so focused on it that eventually you burn out, and you become very exhausted, because we tend to forget that we need to rest, and we need to drink, and we need to eat, and we need to go to the bathroom, and so on and so forth. So, and then to the detriment of the other little goals that you might set yourself. So I would say, you know, set yourself goals that are reasonable for you, but also be aware of that ability that we have to hyper focus on areas that are of our interest, because what you want to do is you want to work for a couple of hours, let's say, on that particular goal that you want to achieve, but you want to have breaks. You want to give yourself a break. And I always say that one of the, and that came up yesterday actually in one of the trainings that I was doing, when we were talking about hyper focus, give yourself time to transition onto the other goal that you have set yourself. So let's say if I am, I've got about 5, I think, workshops that I'm working on at the moment, and I know that if I get going on one, I'll probably get going on one, and I will be researching and studying and putting content together, and I can do that for possibly until it's done, and it might take a couple of months to get that done, but there are 5 to work on. So I give each of them a couple of hours, and I give myself an hour in the middle, and that transition is a hard one because I don't want to stop doing what I'm doing because I really like doing it. So I know that I have to go through a process of, before I physically move on to another thing, I have to emotionally prepare myself for it. So I've got that process of grieving, I call it, in which I go, oh, I can't believe that has run. Oh, the alarm has run. Oh, I really wanted to carry on. Oh, that I was so stuck into it, and I was creating this and that. So going back, I'm going to go back to what you were saying about using technology, because I've just remember one of the things that I used to get very stuck with was images. So I use poe.com to create images for me. So you can type of, I don't know, I will just say, give me an image of a very colorful brain with letters in it, and it will just, you put that in there and it will just create an image. So I know that the images I'm using on my presentations are not copyright by anyone else, because the thing has created it for me. So then I'm safe, because I was always very worried that I was going to be done for taking an image. So I use that nowadays. So anyway, so I use the hour of transitioning onto, so emotionally transition, and then cognitively thinking, right, my next workshop is that I'm going to be working on is on that. And then physically I open and transition. So I would say, set yourself goals, and if you are in hyperfocus, do it that way. If you are working towards a goal that doesn't interest you, that's going to be hard to motivate yourself. So I always say, start up with 5 minutes, because and then give yourself permission to carry on working for longer. Or if you're only going to work for 5 minutes, just set yourself an alarm and say, but start off with plenty of time. So there are workshops that I've got to do, that I've been asked to do them, and they're not, I like doing what I'm doing, but they're not possibly the most interesting, right, type of content. So if I start with 5 minutes and I go, well, 5 minutes go by, and I say, well, I'll just do another 5 minutes. And if all I'm doing is opening up a tab and doing some research. I might not even read. I just copy the links and I put it on the PowerPoint, so you know, to be read. And then the next time I come in, I've got the first link, so that will be click on that link, read through the content of that study or that research, extract and put in. So that will be 5 minutes at a time, but 5 minutes at a time gets you going. And you've got it in the back of your head. Is that it's called the Zeigarnik effect. That is that you know, what is open in your brain, that computer tab, if you think about it, that is open up, is present. So your brain wants to get back to it and close the cycle. So when I talk to people about the Zeigarnik effect, I say, you know, it's that knocking on the door, din, 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 din. And you can't help it, and you go din, din. So even if you know, your brain is going to go tin tin, and that's how your brain operates. So you leave it open. And another thing that I tend to say to people, you know, if you've set up a goal and you're struggling, but you get going, but you tend to get distracted, shape your environment to support you with it as well. So one of my goals, a physical goal, was to drink more water, because all I was doing all day long was drinking tea and coffee. So then that means 12 o'clock, I'm still going like, oh, yay. And I thought, no, I can't do that all day.
The water.
Yeah, just drink the water, exactly. So what I do is I put, I've got a bottle of water.
Did you see the bees on it?
Yeah, I know, that's so cute.
Sorry.
So
there we go. Sorry.
There we go. That's so cute. So mine is just a plain bottle of water. But I've had my 2 couple of coffees, and now what I do is I plonk these in front of the kettle, so I know that the next time I'm coming to click on the kettle, it's like, oh no, it's there. So fill it up now and drink water. And it will be the same with if you're doing a task, plan for any obstacle that is going to come your way. So for me, for example, doing spreadsheets is really, really hard. So the obstacle is going to be that, you know, I'm not going to open it. So I to start off with, I get up in the morning, and the obstacle is going to be, if you don't open the spreadsheet, you're not going to work on it. So my first thing is, when I get into the office, if I'm doing spreadsheets, is to come in and I just open it and I leave it open. So and I go and make my coffee, because that will be 7 o'clock in the morning when I do that. And then I go and make my coffee and my breakfast and all the rest of it. And when I walk into the office at 9, it's open. And that prompts me to do 5 minutes and get it out of the way first thing in the morning if I can, because otherwise it's going to sit in the back of my head, because I see it in the background. So I want to get it out of the way. Exactly, because it stresses me otherwise. So the little things that you can do in terms of individual and in terms of organizations, just what we said earlier, just be willing. Just, you know, it's just changing that lens and be willing to have a conversation, and be willing to ask and to notice. You know, sometimes people say, I remember working with an organization a few months back, and one of the HR people said, oh, well, you know, because I want to go over and say to this particular person, I think you've got ADHD, and there's certain ways that we can help you. And I kind of cringed, and I went, I think there would be different ways to have that conversation. But if you go and approach someone and say, well, I think you're autistic, and we can help you, it's all good intention, but it's not going to come across in a way that, you know, because nowadays we talk more about it, but there is still a stigma associated with terminology such as, right, or with conditions, not terminologies, conditions really, autism, and we still have that stigma attached to it. ADHD, we still sometimes have that stigma, and you don't know how that person perceives the condition. So I oftentimes say to organizations, you know, if you notice something, just say what you notice. Don't go and say, I think, you know, because the person is going to come and say, well, who are you to diagnose in such a way? But you might say something along the lines of during an appraisal or a meeting or a supervision or a catch up, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've noticed that I've noticed that you have difficulties maybe with spreadsheets. And if someone were to come and say to me, you know, I've noticed that you've got difficulties with spreadsheets, and I wonder if there is anything I can do, we can do to help, I would say I hate them. And that would be possibly a starting point of, yeah, they're not everyone's cup of tea, but
no,
that will actually allow me to say,
yeah.
I
Why
find
what
very
is the,
difficult to get the formulas, and I find it really hard. I don't mind populating them, but I find really hard to put the formulas in. And that might allow the person to say, would it make a difference if I put the formulas in and send it across to you? You can just populate it. Because I truly don't mind populating them. It's just the formulas that I can't get my head around.
No, there's
But
so many of them.
yeah, and it's so many. But you know, or the person might say, oh, so and so is very good with formulas. Do you want me to ask if they're happy to do that for you? And that will actually allow me to feel comfortable and that's a simple accommodation again.
No.
I'm not saying I'm not doing it. I'm just saying I just find I don't mind populating. I actually like that, but I find it very hard to do the
actually get the
formulas.
formulas,
And that's what stresses me.
And that sort of links in a bit. We were talking earlier about my learner that with the reading and the stuff for the exam, you know, I didn't say to the person, oh, I think you're neurodiverse. I just felt that there was, from my experience of working with, I knew there was a problem, so I knew I had to get something put in place, and that was how I did it. And I just, when we came to, I just said, oh, I know, I said I won't be able to do that for you because obviously I'm invigilating, so I've got somebody here to help you with it, which obviously I'm not able to do. So that's again ways around it. Just very, very quickly, because I know we've got our time is almost at an end, but I was going to say, we've talked a lot about goals, we've talked a lot about confidence, we've talked about our own learning journeys, but how do you think how can continuous learning contribute to your personal or professional growth in the context of neurodiversity? And what resources or practices would you suggest to anyone looking to build confidence or expertise in inclusion?
Yeah, good question. I think the more you learn, the more you educate yourself, the more curious you are about human beings, really. You know, it's going beyond terminology or label or term, right? At the moment, it's the more you're curious about being able to be accepting and tolerant and embracing that we are all very, very different. The better we are going to be suited in, you know, as an organization or as society, as you know, humanity, really. So learning is very, very important. I always say to people, you know, see what your interest might be. You can use videos, you can read books, you can do podcasts like you were mentioning earlier. Some people don't like them, but some people really like them. Find sources of information that are reliable, first of all. And that's something that I would say as well. You know, there is loads nowadays, there is so much information everywhere. But find sources of information that are reliable, that are credited with good you know, reputation in a way, platforms where you don't have random people, I would say, that you cannot verify their background and their knowledge and expertise. And that actually will inform your practice. It shows good practice as an organization as well, right? That you are constantly learning and you're constantly improving and you're constantly wanting to know what's new out there.
Yeah.
And it shows good practice to start off with. And it shows that you're open-minded at all levels as an individual and as an organization.
Yeah.
And it shows that you are inclusive
Yeah.
of different ways and approaches and different differences in brains, differences in preferences,
Yeah.
differences in who you have working for you. And the more you embrace that, and the more you learn, and the more you explore, the better the workplace is, and the better the culture becomes, because now it becomes a culture of a place where everyone belongs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's what you want. You want everyone to belong. You want to create an environment in which people feel psychologically safe. So they're able to come to you with ideas, but they're able to challenge also ideas and think outside the box and come and say, well, why are we doing it this way? I was thinking that, if we could do it that way, and suddenly that's when innovation, happens, and when creativity takes place, is when you start seeing businesses grow and organizations grow, because if we all think in the same way, we're going to get the same results. But when you start mixing different approaches and different ways, all of a sudden you've got this very diverse team of people all working together because they all feel safe and connected, and they're all working together with enthusiasm just to reach a goal. And for an organization to have this as a good practice, it translates onto less people being absent, employee retention, satisfaction, less hiring cost as well, less cost on being, having an employee off sick for months, but the impact on other employees having to pick up that work as well. It shows when individuals research your company, when you're advertising, it shows that, this is the place where I want to go and work. Because I can tell that I belong there. So what you're doing really by learning and developing at the personal level is you're having that impact. It's from the you're having an impact from the top down and the bottom up. If everyone were to do that learning, it's kind of, you've got that big impact in the sense of, this is who we are, this is our culture. So you would attract lots of talent as well, because that would be your differentiator as an organization between a salary and a package that everyone else will offer and you. So you really want to work on being inclusive and attracting people that way, because there is competition out there to fill in positions. Companies are struggling, so you can chuck in another goodie, right? Pension and I don't know, eye and dental and whatever it is, cover and whatever else. Someone else might chuck in something else, day off for your birthday. But if you're competing on, this is us, no one can compete with you on who you are and your culture.
No.
So that's all. I think that's all I would say, that learning is very, very important, because it will allow you to do that.
No, that's very true. Very true. I suppose the last question, if you've got time, is this is really about you. How do you go about designing your bespoke training programs for the different organisations, and what trends or future developments do you anticipate in the field of neurodiversity and inclusion?
Good. So in terms of the missing link and the way we operate, all our training is bespoke. So we get the request, and we sit with the person, with the client, and we have several discussions. Sometimes it takes months. So we've been currently working with a local council, and we've been working with them now since March. So it takes time to work out where they're at, and we always meet them where they're at. So sometimes there is there is quite a lot of work that needs to be done before we even start putting programs in place for neuro inclusion. We do lots of awareness training programs. We try to bring everyone on board, but we work with them and we work with their internal departments. So we would work with HR, we would work with marketing and communications, and we'll start making noise within the organization in terms of we want to create a neurodiversity in the workplace forum. So and every organization is different. Some organizations use surveys, anonymous surveys. So we work with them on putting surveys in place. Some organizations use assessments as well. So we work with them on creating the assessment that they can then send out to heads of departments, assessments in terms of what would it be, or what would you say the knowledge on neurotypes would be within your department? Would you say that there is a percentage of neurotypical and neurodivergent individuals? What you have in place? So then we start figuring out what is needed, because oftentimes people come and say, my pain point is people being absent. Or my pain point is now I've got these people that are neurodivergent, but they are advocating for very quick change. And now we don't have the infrastructure, so we are worried. We're worried we're going to lose them. We're worried that they they're going to go off sick. We need to work a way around it. So sometimes it might not be let's put let's change the organization, but it might be let's work with the individual first of all, so they don't go off sick, so they've got coping skills and strategies, while in the background you start figuring out maybe what your budget might be, what your strategy might be, what you want to get out of it. So that might be some internal work that they need to do as an organization while we work with that team of neurodivergent individuals. So it might be a team of the last few ones for 5 or 6 neurodivergent individuals, between most of them were ADHDers, but there was a couple of autistic individuals in there. So how do we manage anxiety? How do we self-advocate? What can we do that the company, can we do ourselves? Company can do it, but we can do something. And the way that I envision things changing, I think at the moment, neurodiversity in the workplace has picked up, and it's something that people are talking about more and more, and there is lots of content. I think the way things need to take a turn, and we see more, is neurodiversity in education. I think our education system needs to be reformed. We're still teaching kids as we did when we were back in Victorian days. So 1850s, and they're still sitting down and they're still looking forward. And so I think supporting teachers, DAs, and so on, with the awareness and education around what they might find in the classroom would be very useful, because they don't have that and they get thrown into it. And sometimes, they have 30 kids to manage. And I know, I've been a teacher, so I know that that's hard work. And if they don't, have the knowledge, how would we expect them? So we need to invest in our education staff. We need to invest in them, and I see that schools, they don't have budgets, so it's difficult for them to invest. So the trend, I think, where people are moving more into would be corporate world. They're doing really well on designing recruitment processes that are accessible, job crafting and things like that. But in terms of education, we haven't done any of that work. That's what I think.
So, well, I think we found where our target is then.
I know. I think that's where we need to focus.
Oh, brilliant. Olga, thank you so much for talking to me today. It's been absolutely amazing talking to you and fascinating,
Thank
learning
you.
again so much. I mean, we could probably talk for another hour, but I know,
Possibly we could do.
I know we're pushed for time. So thank you. There was a
Thank you.
few tech sites and things that you've referred to in there. Is it possible to get some of this written down? And what I'll do is we've got it. I've got an email address. If anybody's watching and they've got questions to put to Olga, if you send an email to me at beinthespotlight@gmail.com, I can then forward any information on and find out, forward it to Olga and get things set back to you. So that's beinthespotlight@gmail.com, and obviously you're watching on YouTube, so you know where to find us. So thanks so much for joining
Thank you
us.
so much, Sue.
Take care.
Thank
Okay,
you.
all the
Take
best now.
care.
Cheers.
Be in the spotlight is the place to be network-driven. Discuss technology. Be in the spotlight is the place to be. Tech Talk tips for free.